The world before roads wasn't an empty canvas, but a landscape patiently awaiting life's imprint. Imagine the vast, unbroken stretches of wilderness, dense forests where shadows danced with the wind, sprawling grasslands whispering secrets to the sky, and rugged mountains standing as silent sentinels. In this primordial world, paths weren't built, they simply emerged. Their genesis was profoundly simple, born of the most fundamental needs. A herd of deer, driven by the instinct to find water, invariably chose the path of least resistance, a gentle slope over a steep climb, firm ground over boggy earth. One animal moved, then another, until the repeated pressure of countless hooves began to compress the earth, subtly parting the undergrowth. A faint, barely perceptible indentation would be left behind, the first whisper of a trail. Humans, too, were guided by this same primal wisdom. Early nomadic hunters and gatherers, forever in search of sustenance, would follow these animal tracks, finding them reliable guides to waterholes, fruitful valleys, or safer passages through treacherous terrain. Or charting their own course, they'd instinctively seek out the easiest routes between their temporary shelters and hunting grounds. Each footfall, each return journey added another layer to the nascent pathway. It wasn't a conscious act of engineering, but a continuous, unspoken agreement between humanity and the land. The sounds were minimal, almost non-existent, beyond the immediate environment. The soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the rhythmic swish of tall grass, the distant call of a bird, perhaps the lowing of migrating bison, or the occasional rustle of a hidden creature. These weren't the sounds of construction, but of organic formation. The earth slowly yielded, the vegetation learned to part, and the path became a subtle, living thing, growing wider, deeper, and more defined with every passing season. These were the very first unseen pathways, born of repetition and necessity, connecting points in a vast world long before anyone ever conceived of a map or a paved stone. They were the silent arteries of an emerging world, guiding life from one essential point to the next, without fanfare or design. As these faint lines grew more distinct, connecting disparate parts of the landscape, a new kind of need would slowly begin to emerge, pushing beyond mere survival. As the sun rose and set over countless millennia, these nascent trails, born of instinct and repetition, began to witness a subtle yet profound shift. Humanity was changing. The ceaseless quest for the next hunt or freshest berries started to give way to something more settled, more communal. Small groups began to linger in fertile areas, experimenting with planting seeds, domesticating animals. Villages, then settlements, slowly took root. With this newfound stability came an evolving set of needs. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about connection. A village might have an abundance of one resource, perhaps a unique kind of stone perfect for tools, or a particularly rich deposit of salt, while lacking another. The nearby forest dwellers might have prized timber, but no access to fish. This subtle hum of early trade began to emerge, first within a local radius, then gradually expanding. The simple animal tracks and hunter-gatherer paths, though reliable for basic movement, weren't quite enough for this budding commerce. Carrying a heavy load of obsidian tools over a barely visible deer trail, constantly ducking under branches or navigating around fallen logs, was inefficient and exhausting. There was a quiet, collective desire for something more. a more predictable and less arduous route. The natural pathways, once sufficient, now highlighted a growing inadequacy. This growing need wasn't announced with trumpets or grand declarations. It was a gradual realization that unfolded across generations. The burden of carrying goods, the time lost to difficult terrain, the occasional spoilage of precious cargo due to slow travel, these were the subtle pressures that nudged early communities towards a more deliberate approach to their surroundings. The landscape, once merely traversed, now needed to be tamed, if only slightly, to facilitate this emerging web of exchange. The very faintness of the old paths began to beckon for intervention, for a helping hand to guide the way more clearly. The time was coming to consciously shape the land for movement. The quiet whisper of need began to translate into action. A slow but profound shift from simply following paths to actively shaping them. This wasn't the work of grand empires or master engineers, but of small, determined communities. Imagine early settlers faced with a stubborn patch of thorny bushes blocking a crucial route to water. Instead of detouring, day after day, a communal decision would slowly form, clear the way. With rudimentary tools, perhaps sharpened stones or sturdy sticks, they would begin the arduous task of removing obstacles. Brambles would be pulled, small saplings hacked down, and larger stones rolled aside. This was often a seasonal effort, perhaps during a drier period when the ground was firmer, or after a harvest when collective labor was more readily available. The sounds would have been simple: the rhythmic chop of a stone axe, the grunt of effort as a heavy rock was dislodged, the rustle of displaced foliage. Then came the subtle art of leveling, a section of uneven ground, constantly tripping up travelers or making heavy loads precarious, would be addressed. Perhaps earth was moved from a small mound to fill a slight depression, tamped down with bare feet or simple wooden tools. These weren't precision tasks, but rather pragmatic solutions to immediate problems. Drainage, too, became an intuitive concern. A soggy stretch of ground, perpetually muddy after rains, would encourage the creation of a very shallow ditch alongside the path, nudging water away. These early acts of road building were about incremental improvement, driven by pure necessity and the repeated experience of inconvenience. Each cleared branch, each smooth patch of earth, each stone carefully placed to offer firmer footing, represented a small but significant step in transforming a natural trail into a more deliberate route. It was the quiet, persistent effort of many hands, working not to build a monument, but simply to make life a little easier, one step at a time. This was the moment humanity truly began to cross the threshold, moving from passively navigating the landscape to actively, if humbly, sculpting it for travel. With the initial clearing and leveling complete, early road builders faced new challenges, prompting an era of quiet innovation. The problem wasn't just removing obstacles, it was about endurance. How could a path withstand the ceaseless tramping of feet, the wear of animal hoofs, and the relentless assault of rain and wind? The search for more robust solutions began, piece by painstaking piece. In marshy areas where the ground consistently turned into impassable mud, early communities learned to lay down logs or bundles of branches, creating rudimentary corduroy roads. These weren't smooth surfaces, but they offered a stable, albeit bumpy passage where none had existed before. The sound here would have been the creak and groan of timber underfoot, a rhythmic, almost musical complaint against the weight above. Cross open plains, where paths could easily become indistinct, the focus shifted to definition. sometimes simply digging shallow parallel ditches on either side of the track helped delineate the route, preventing wagons or pack animals from straying. In other places, larger stones, gathered from nearby fields, might be placed along the edges, acting as simple curbs to guide traffic and prevent the path from spreading too wide. The very surface of the path itself became a point of slow refinement. Where possible, communities learned to gather smaller stones, pebbles, and gravel, spreading them over the compacted earth. This wasn't paving in the Roman sense, but a basic form of reinforcement. The added material helped with drainage, prevented the formation of deep ruts, and offered a firmer, more stable footing. The gentle scrape of bare hands sifting through earth, the quiet clatter of stones being dropped into place. These were the subtle sounds of progress. Different environments demanded different solutions. In rocky terrain, the challenge was less about laying down material and more about clearing it away. Passages might be painstakingly carved through solid rock, using fire to crack the stone, followed by the slow, arduous work of chiseling away fragments. This was often slow and backbreaking, a testament to the immense human effort applied to literally carve a path through the wilderness. These rudimentary, yet increasingly clever, adaptations marked a crucial phase. This phase involved the deliberate and continuous effort to make pathways not just passable, but truly durable and reliable, preparing the way for even grander ambitions. The scattered, local efforts of path improvement, born of necessity and ingenuity, eventually converged into something far more ambitious. No longer content with mere trails, some civilizations began to envision vast networks, arteries that would bind disparate regions and facilitate the movement of armies, goods, and ideas on an unprecedented scale. This monumental leap found its most enduring expression in the Roman roads. Imagine for a moment not the glory of legions, but the quiet, relentless dedication of the surveyors, engineers, and countless laborers who transformed these ancient aspirations into a concrete reality. The sounds would have been a rhythmic symphony of human effort, the dull thud of heavy hammers on stakes, marking out the precise lines of the road, the low murmur of commands carried on the wind, and the pervasive scrape of shovels against earth. The construction was a meticulous, layered process, a testament to Roman pragmatism and durability. First, a deep trench was dug, sometimes several feet deep, to create a stable foundation. This initial layer, the satumen, consisted of large, rough stones, often laid dry or with a bit of clay, providing drainage and support. Above this came the rudis, a layer of smaller stones, broken tiles, and rubble mixed with lime mortar, creating a cohesive, almost concrete-like base. Next was the nucleus, a finer layer of gravel and sand, often mixed with a stronger pozzolanic mortar, carefully compacted to create a smooth, dense surface. Finally, the crowning glory, the summa crusta, the wearing surface. Depending on local materials, this could be tightly packed gravel, but for the most important roads, it was composed of large, polygonal basalt or limestone paving stones, cut with remarkable precision. These massive stones, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds, were painstakingly fitted together, often without mortar, relying on their sheer weight and interlocking shapes to create an incredibly durable and remarkably smooth surface. The air would have been filled with the resonant clink of stone on stone as masons chipped away, and the straining grunts of laborers as they maneuvered the colossal blocks into their final positions. this was not a rapid process. Each mile represented weeks, months, sometimes even years of relentless toil. The consequence of such ambition was the immense, often unseen human cost. The sweat, muscle, and persistent dedication of thousands, transforming wild landscapes into the meticulously engineered backbone of an empire. These roads, though built for practical purposes, stood as silent monuments to an unparalleled collective effort, forever changing the face of the known world. From the meticulously engineered Roman roads, our journey drifts eastward, not to a singular grand superhighway, but to a vast, intricate web of pathways known collectively as the Silk Road. This wasn't a paved artery like those of the Roman Empire, but a series of interconnected, often rough and ever-shifting tracks that stretched across continents. Here, the heavy price wasn't paid in the sheer volume of material moved by legions of laborers, but in the relentless perseverance required to traverse immense distances, one slow, incremental stage at a time. Imagine the vast, silent landscapes of Central Asia, sun-baked deserts where the wind whispered through unseen dunes, towering mountain passes where the air grew thin and cold, and endless steppes where the only sound was the soft padding of animal feet. Along these routes, goods rarely traveled from end to end with a single merchant. Instead, they moved in a complex relay system, passing from one trader to the next in a chain of countless local exchanges. A bolt of silk might travel 100 miles, be traded for spices, which then continued another 200 miles with a new caravan. The challenges were constant and mundane. Water was scarce, and finding reliable sources dictated many routes. Sandstorms could obliterate tracks in an instant, demanding innate navigational skills and a deep understanding of the land. Bandits were a perpetual, if often unseen, threat. Yet, the flow of goods persisted, driven by the quiet demand for luxuries, knowledge, and everyday necessities. The rhythm of travel was slow and deliberate. Camel caravans, the ships of this desert ocean, moved at a steady, unhurried pace. Their soft, broad feet uniquely adapted to the shifting sands. The creak of their burdens, the occasional jingle of bells on their harnesses, and the soft murmur of their drivers were the dominant sounds, blending with the vastness of the landscape. Nights were spent in simple way stations or under the open sky, a fire casting flickering shadows, offering meager comfort against the chill. The heavy price of the Silk Road was the sheer, unending endurance demanded of both humans and animals. It was the weariness of the endless journey, the vulnerability to the elements, and the constant vigilance required to move precious cargo across such immense, often unforgiving distances. It was a testament to human enterprise, not through grand design, but through persistent, quiet effort, forging a connection across half the world, one step, one camel load at a time. Having journeyed from the imperceptible trails of prehistory to the engineered marvels of Rome and the sprawling networks of the Silk Road, we now turn our attention to other remarkable, though often less celebrated, ancient road systems. These pathways, built with astonishing ingenuity and persistence, demonstrate how the fundamental principles of simple, dedicated effort were applied in vastly different cultural and geographical contexts. This segment helps us realize how widespread and essential these quiet endeavors were, transforming landscapes across the globe, Consider the Inca road network in the rugged Andes Mountains. Unlike the Romans, the Inca did not use the wheel, nor did they have iron tools or pack animals larger than llamas. Yet, they constructed an astonishing 25,000 miles of roads, often carving pathways directly into sheer mountainsides. Imagine the slow, painstaking work, laborers using only stone tools to chip away at granite, creating narrow ledges, or building intricate causeways across treacherous swamps. The soundscape here would be dominated by the rhythmic clink of stone on stone, the deep breaths of men working at high altitudes, and the soft, almost silent, padding of llamas' feet as they carefully navigated these incredible mountain trails. This network, with its steep staircases and suspension bridges woven from natural fibers, was a testament to human will overcoming seemingly impossible terrain, all to facilitate communication and transport across their vast empire. Then there were the myriad early postal routes. These weren't necessarily grand paved roads, but often repurposed older trails, made more reliable for the swift, crucial movement of information. Think of the Persian Angorian system, or the Roman cursus publicus, or even the relay systems of ancient China. The focus here was on speed and consistency, not monumental construction. The sounds would have been the steady beat of a runner's feet, perhaps the rhythmic clip-clop of a horse's hooves, day after day, through changing weather and landscapes. These routes transformed from simple travel paths into vital arteries of governance and trade, highlighting how the quiet, persistent movement of individuals fundamentally connected distant communities. In both these examples, the transformation lies in the profound realization that these quiet, persistent pathways, regardless of their grandeur or the simplicity of their construction, were the fundamental connective tissue of early civilizations. They allowed the flow of goods, the rapid transmission of ideas and decrees, and the silent, continuous movement of people. They were the unseen architects of human connection, shaping societies and enabling their growth, simply by providing a reliable way to get from one place to another. As the final echoes of ancient footsteps fade into the vastness of time, we arrive at a profound realization. The unseen pathways, those humble tracks and trails that began as mere indentations in the earth, are perhaps humanity's most enduring and understated legacy. These weren't the grand monuments of pharaohs or the soaring cathedrals of emperors, but rather the quiet, persistent efforts of countless forgotten hands tirelessly working to connect their world. From the first animal trails, followed by nomadic hunters, to the painstakingly cleared routes for early trade, to the meticulously engineered layers of Roman roads and the vast, intricate networks traversed by Silk Road caravans. Each step was a testament to a fundamental human drive. It was the innate desire to overcome distance, to bridge divides, and to facilitate the movement of life itself, goods, ideas, people. The rhythmic crunch of gravel, the soft pad of hooves, the creak of loaded carts, the distant murmur of voices. These sounds, often overlooked, were the true symphony of civilization's slow and steady advancement. These ancient roads, though sometimes buried under centuries of earth or transformed by modern development, laid the indispensable foundation for nearly every form of connectivity we experience today. The routes chosen by a herd of deer thousands of years ago might, with countless transformations, underpin the very path of a modern highway or a railway line. The principles of drainage, of stable foundations, of adapting to terrain, all refined over millennia of quiet effort, continue to inform our grandest engineering projects. In the end, the unseen pathways are a gentle reminder of the power of incremental change and collective endeavor. They show us how wild landscapes were slowly, painstakingly transformed into the very circulatory system of civilizations, allowing ideas to spread, economies to flourish, and cultures to intermingle. It is a testament to humanity's continuous, often silent reshaping of the world to facilitate movement and connection. A quiet and comforting thought as we drift into repose, knowing that even the most monumental achievements often begin with a single persistent step.